Let's do number 3 together. This one's kind of tricky because we got a fraction. So to graph, we want to plug in numbers for x, get values for y, and put it on our graph. So what should we plug in for x? -1? What else? 1, 0, 1, and 2. You can plug in whatever you want for x, but these are just going to be the easiest when you're evaluating. So when we plug in -1, we have 1/3 times 4 to the power of -1. What does a negative exponent do? Makes it a fraction. So we have 1/3 times 1/4. How do we multiply two fractions together? Just straight across. Multiply the tops and then multiply the bottoms. So we have 1 over, what's 3 times 4? 12. So 1 over 12. 1 over 12 is a really, really small number. You can do 1 divided by 12 to figure out what the exact value is, but it's going to be barely off the ground from 0. So we're going to put a dot right there. So we go to the left, -1, go up 1 over 12. So this would be -1, 1/12. That's our first point. Next, we're going to plug in 0. 1/3 times 4 to the power of 0. What is 4 to the power of 0? 1. So 1/3 times 1 is just 1/3. So we plugged in 0 and got 1/3. So we go to our graph. Stay at 0, go up 1/3. So still not that far off the ground. Next, let's plug in 1. We have 1/3 times 4 to the power of 1. What's 4 to the power of 1? 4 over 1. So 1/3 times 4 over 1 would be 4 over 3. So we have 4 over 3. Our point would be 1, 4/3. Now we can put 4/3 in our calculator to see what exact value it would be. What's like the decimal version of it. So it's about like 1.3. So we go to the right one and up 1.3. And then lastly, we want to plug in 2. So we have 1/3 times 4 to the power of 2. What's 4 to the power of 2? 16. So 1/3 times 16 over 1 would be 16 over 3. What is our point? Would be 2, 16 over 3. If we put 16 divided by 3 in our calculator, what's the decimal version of that? About 5.3. So on our graph, we're going to go the right 2 and up 5.3. Once we have our 4 points, we just draw our graph. Do we have exponential growth or exponential decay? Exponential growth. All right, so number 7, we just have to identify each function as linear, quadratic, or exponential. If something's linear, it's just going to have an x in it. It won't have any type of exponent. It's just going to be maybe like a number times x or a number plus x. It's just going to be a simple x. Quadratic is when we have x squared. And exponential is when we have like some number, I'll call it a, to the power of x. So when x is in our exponent. So let's look at a. What do we think this is? Linear, quadratic, or exponential? Is x in the exponent? No. But we do have an exponent, so it's quadratic, because this x is squared, so it is quadratic. What about b? What do we think? Exponential, because the x is in the exponent. What about c? Linear. And d? Exponential, because the x is in the exponent. So you just got to look and see what's happening to that x. That determines what type of equation you have. Alright, so let's look at our word problems from yesterday. So for the first two, number 8 and 9, we use our formula a is equal to a times 1 plus r to the power of t. So we need to figure out what our a is, which is our starting amount, our r, which is our rate but in decimal form, and t, which is the amount of years. So you deposit $1,600 in a bank account. Find the balance after 3 years if the account pays 5% interest yearly. So what's our A? What do we start with? 1,600. What's our rate? 0.05. Awesome. It's 5%, but we need to change it to a decimal, so we move the decimal twice to the left. So 0.05. And then what's our time? 3 years. So t is 3. We plug everything in. So we have a is equal to little a, which is 1,600, times 1 plus r, so 0.05, to the power of 3. And then once we get here, we just have to follow our order of operations when we put it in our calculator. So what should we do first? The parentheses. So everything else stays the same. We have 1,600. We're just adding what's going on in the parentheses. So 1 plus 0.05 is 1.05. What do we have to do next? The exponent. So we have a is equal to 1,600. And then we have to figure out what that 1.05 is to the third power. So remember, if you're putting this in the phone or iPad calculator, you do 1.05, click that X raised to the Y button, and then 3. If you put it in a calculator, you do 1.05, that little up arrow, and then 3. So it just depends on what calculator you have. For the quiz, just like always, you need 2 devices, so make sure you just have an extra device for your calculator. So if you usually, use your phone as your calculator, just make sure you have a device for Zoom too. So 1.05 raised to the power of 3 gives us 1.157, and we keep going. Keep it in your calculator if you can. If not, write all the decimal places down. What do we do last? Multiply. So we just multiply it by 1,600. What do we get? $1,852.20. Awesome. We're dealing with money, so we round to 2 decimal places. All right, let's look at number 9. We're using that same formula that we used up here. So an adult takes 400 milligrams of ibuprofen. Each hour, the amount of ibuprofen in the person's system decreases by 25%. How much ibuprofen is left after 6 hours? So this one's a little bit different, which we didn't talk about yesterday, but we'll go over it today. So we need to figure out what our starting amount is, what our rate is, and the time. What's our starting amount? 400. What's our rate? 0.25, because our percent's 25, so we just move our decimal place twice. And then what's our time? 6, because we're dealing with hours here. So we plug everything in. We have A is equal to 400 times, the only difference is, for this one, it says decreases, so instead of 1 plus, we do 1 minus our rate. So 1 minus 0.25 to the power of 6. What do we have to do first to follow our order of operations? The parentheses. So 1 minus 0.25 would be 0.75. What should we do next? The exponent. So 0.75 to the power of 6. We get 0.1779 ... We just want to keep it all in our calculator. And then lastly, we have multiplication. So we multiply that times 400. So we get 71.19. So just be careful when it says decreases, use the same formula, but you subtract instead of add. So it's 1 minus instead of 1 plus. All right, let's look at the last two. So for these, we use our PERT formula because it says compounded continuously. So we use P times E raised to the power of RT. PERT. So this gives us everything, but we'll rewrite it. What's our P? P, the starting amount. 2,000. What's our rate? So we move the decimal 2 places, which would be 0.051. So just be careful with your rate when moving the decimal. And then what's our T? 3. So we plug everything in. We have A is equal to 2,000 times E, which is just a button in our calculator, raised to the power of 0.051, 0.051 times 3. What should we do first? We do the parentheses up here, so 0.051 times 3. And that gives us 0.153. What should we do next? The exponent. So in our calculator, you can just keep that 0.153, and then you can click that E raised to the X button. So this would be how you put it in your calculator. Make sure you know how to use the calculator. Whatever calculator you're using, make sure you know how to use it before the quiz. So you can always check your answers with what we got in class to see if you're putting it in the calculator right. So we have 2,000 times 1.165 ... We want to keep it in our calculator so we have as many decimal places as possible. Lastly, we just multiply times 2,000. We get 2,330.65. We're dealing with money, so we can put a little $sign up there. Any questions? All right, let's take a look at 11. So we're using our PERT formula again. So we need to find our P, our R, and our T. What is the principal? 950. What's our rate? 0.065. Awesome. We move our decimal 2 places, so it's 0.065. And then what's our time? 10. Now we plug everything in. We have our amount is equal to P, 950, times E raised to the power of 0.065 times 10. What do we do first? Parentheses. So we want to do up top here. So multiply these two. So we get 0.65, because 0.065 times 10 would be 0.65. And then what should we do next? The exponent. So E raised to the power of 0.65 would be 1.9155 ... Keeps going, but we're going to leave it in our calculator. And then we multiply this times 950. And we get 1,819.76. That's our answer.